American.
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting, just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding this information? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
Colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
we become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem.
Ensure,
We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. You can't agree to that. How are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over our cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email. And all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
This is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CI director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire We had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I was
you've
still
already
in
done.
Parliament, I...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean to the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the major's. The major's assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone. Or to take the nation to war partway. Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip. Because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me, and he said, sir, you got to come in and talk to me a sec. He says, we've made the decision we're going to war with Iraq. I said, we're going to war with Iraq? Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show. But if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome, everybody, to Redacted on this Wednesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And this is the show where we focus on the stories the mainstream media is totally ignoring.
Did you just have a Joe Biden moment?
I know. I was just looking right before we were about to start. It was like, hey, the one camera's not on. I was like, are we going? Yes, we're going. Anyway.
I thought you were thinking about the bidet.
No, I'm not thinking about that. Anyway. Yeah.
It's like, are we live? What's happening? We are live.
Yeah, I had a Genocide Joe moment for a moment, okay. Joe Biden moment, where he's just like staring off in the crowd. They're like Genocide Joe, and he's like, hey, they're clapping for me. Hey, these people out there are clapping for me.
All right, today what we're going to talk about, I will tell you, we're going to cover the border invasion at the southern border as it continues to heat up and continues to be a tragedy. Tragedy is a new word, travesty and tragedy for everybody.
Are you sure you want to do this?
I'm ready. Also, the tape reveals that Kari Lake has been bribed by who to not run for politics. We're going to talk about that. Also, studies show why you are hesitant about vaccines. They show that the public needs reprogramming through social media disinformation. Bill Gates is in on this one, too. All of that and more as Redacted starts right now.
Very excited about the trucker. The truckers down at the southern border are starting to arrive in a big way. I'm telling you, Texas is going to be the focus of the nation, could be the focus of the world in the next few days here as this Take Back Our Border rally is unfolding. Of course, that's going to take place on February 3rd. A lot of people already lining up, trucks being pulled off the side of the road near the border. Do not cross our border at this spot. You do not mess with Texas. It's going to be very interesting. So we're going to be covering that from multiple different angles over the next week here. We're very excited about that.
Right, we're going to find out. Here's another way you can find out is on the Redacted newsletter. It is written as a companion to this show. You can find it at redacted.inc. It is totally free. None of it's behind a paywall. There's no level that you need to subscribe to. It's free, and that means free. So put in your email address and then authenticate that email address with their email that we'll send you. And then you are off to receive the daily newsletter. It comes out every day that this show comes out, Monday through Thursday. We aim to have it out in the morning, and then the show comes to you in the afternoon. And it's a great way to get original sources, links to sources that we talk about, so you can read up for things yourself, make up your own mind. Hopefully we're not leading you to any one conclusion. We are seekers of truth together. So again, you can find it at redacted.inc. Once again, that's redacted.inc.
That's right. Yes, indeed. Sorry. Yeah. So I want to show something, though, on the newsletter here. If we can go back to the newsletter screen again, because people receive this welcome email, and when they go to redacted.inc, they have to verify their email. This is so important, okay? Because I had a number of emails from people today that said they didn't get the email. They signed up for it, but they didn't receive it this morning. And it was in my inbox, clayton@redacted.inc. You get the email from me. Anyway, just want to make sure you understand you have to verify the email so that you get the newsletter first thing in the morning. Again, it's redacted.inc is how to sign up. Well, tens of thousands of illegal immigrants are pouring across the U.S. southern border every day. Thousands of Chinese nationals were captured on camera over the past few days in the Darien Gap by investigative journalist Michael Yon, who says tens of thousands of Chinese have been passing through the gap on their way into the United States on a regular basis. Separately, last week, a group of illegal Muslim immigrants were confronted by a group of journalists in the United States, asking, where did you come from? You're here in the United States. Who are you? Where did you come from? Here was his response.
By the way, if you are smart enough, you will know who I am. but you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
The entitlement, guys. Wow.
You will see soon.
So you will know who I am soon enough, he says. Well, that's chilling, and it didn't take reporters very long, actually, to figure out where this guy was from. Turns out this man was allegedly from Azerbaijan, and he'd been in jail for the last 12 years on terrorism charges. Take a look at this.
By the way, if you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
The entitlement, guys. Wow.
You will see soon.
So there you can see he was arrested 12 years ago for terrorism, organizing explosives among the charges to carry out terrorist attacks, and somehow just released last week on January 19th from prison, and he's already in the United States. What in the world is going on here? Again, this is happening in the United States. And this week, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that the Biden administration can remove razor wire from those border fences that the Texas National Guard had erected to try to keep terrorists out, to try to keep the illegal invasion from happening. So what is happening to our country? Well, Tucker tweeted this just a short time ago. So it's unanimous. Everyone in power, from the White House to the hedge fund managers to the Supreme Court of the United States, has decided to destroy the country by allowing it to be invaded. That leaves the population to defend itself. Where are the men of Texas? Why aren't they protecting their state and the nation? Investigative journalist Michael Yon joins me now from the Darien Gap in Panama, the major choke point where these illegals converge before heading up to the United States, using luxury buses to be ferreted up to the United States border. Michael, you just exposed a stunning story down there in Panama that involves the head of Homeland Security, Mayorkas. I want to get to that story in a moment because it's incredibly important. But first, I just want to get your thoughts on a couple of the points that I just made. Number one, on the terrorists having the balls to tell this U.S. reporter, hey, you'll find out who I am soon enough. What was your response when you saw that?
We see this all the time. This is normal for people like me and quite a few others who are on the border all the time, whether Texas, Mexico, Arizona, the whole works, California, or down here in the Darien Gap, Colombia. We see it everywhere, constantly. Very arrogant, very pushy, often. You can tell a lot of these people are on a mission, and that includes Chinese as well. I just took Brett Weinstein and Chris Martinson and Masako Ganaha and Ann Vandersteel back to the Darien Gap with Chuck Colton. We were in there again at the camps, took them out deep into the jungle. Of course, Chuck Colton and Masako Ganaha go down there all the time. And there were many Chinese again, always arrogant, always pushy, always, one guy, for instance, I asked where he's from, and he said Korea. And I said, and then he spoke to his wife, apparent wife, in Mandarin. I said, "You're not from Korea, you just spoke Mandarin." And he laughed. He obviously spoke English as well. And then his apparent daughter, maybe she was a teenager, she spoke some English, and she said, "Oh yes, we're Chinese." Yeah, obviously, right? I mean, I can tell the difference by looking at them. I spent a lot of time in China and Korea and all over Asia, many years, right? And so, but the bottom line is, a lot of the people coming in are definitely on a mission, and a lot of the Chinese go in and they grow marijuana. For instance, in Maine, they've got a huge amount of marijuana facilities in Maine and Oregon and in Oklahoma, California. And what are they putting in that marijuana? Who knows, right? So this is a very serious issue. And Islamic, you got to keep in mind, probably the most dangerous Islamic terrorist organization for Americans is Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is very thick down in Venezuela, right? And the number one group of people coming through are Venezuelans. Many of the Hezbollah speak Spanish fluently, right? And so I'm sorry if you hear background noise. That's actually the Panama Canal back there behind me. And there's a railway and a road back there. So, but the bottom line is many of these people from, in 1994, there was a terrorist bombing here in Panama. It killed 21 or 22 people. About a dozen were Jewish. I recently had lunch with one of the relatives, and within one day of that, there was another attack in Argentina that killed about 85-ish. It was a lot, right, at a Jewish center. That was Hezbollah. They got the mastermind behind the Panama attack is believed to now live in Venezuela, and he owns a bar. You can't make up this stuff, right? So he's still there. So these people that come in to Venezuela, if you're Iranian, you can get a passport immediately. You can just show up, and keep in mind, many of the Hezbollah, when they grew up in Venezuela, their Spanish is absolutely fluent. They can pass as Venezuelans, no problem whatsoever. They've got the accent, the body language, the soccer team, the whole works.
And I've seen a lot of these guys with these sort of fake passports pretending, trying to pass themselves off as different nationalities. Of course, we saw this during Vietnam, people pretending to be Filipino. And so, obviously different passports pretending to fly under the radar. I want to get your take on something you uncovered in Panama, which is a bombshell story. The HIAS facility that you uncovered there is a China camp. Can you explain what this is, and Secretary Mayorkas being a part of this illegal invasion of the United States?
Oh, yes. I mean, I've been talking about HIAS for 3 years now. When I first saw him in Darien, that's right. The Hebrew Immigration or Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, right? And right. So, but it never congealed with people exactly what they are. Doug McGregor, Colonel Doug McGregor sent me an email a few days ago, and he said, Mayorkas was a board member of HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. Actually, Mayorkas is from Cuba. He was born in Cuba, and both of his parents are Jewish, which is interesting. That's probably why he was on the board of HIAS, right? And then he moved. You can see there's a congratulatory letter from HIAS on their website for Mayorkas moving on to bigger and better things from HIAS to become Secretary of Homeland Security. Now, I just took Brett Weinstein and Chris Martinson to the camp where you see the photo of the HIAS sign. They have the HIAS actually one of their headquarters is like 5 minutes walk from me right now in the City of Knowledge in Panama. But down in Darien, they have another office. Actually, it's a building that I almost rented, but HIAS got it first. And it's right beside China Camp, what I call China Camp. Here they call it San Vicente Camp. But China Camp is the camp that Mayorkas went to on April 18th, 2022. I was physically present when he did it. I have video when he did it. He came there on April 18th, 2022. Right next to the HIAS building, which is China Camp, and he increased the size of that camp. This is the main camp. It's really not a camp much anymore. It's more of a bus station. When you come out of the jungle, you can go there, get a shower, and then get on the buses and head up to Costa Rica and Nicaragua and end up in the United States in a week or so. Now, the HIAS, the China Camp, also here called San Vicente Camp down in Darien Province. Again, I've spent months down there, right beside this camp. That camp, the trailers that they put in after Mayorkas came with fistfuls of cash in 2022, the trailers are from China. So in other words, these trailers, I've been inside the trailers, bunch of bunk beds, very clean, very nice, showers. Those facilities actually were made in China, bought with American money. HIAS is mostly funded by American money. It's public. The same with IOM. IOM and HIAS, their offices are right out, 5 minutes walk from here.
So this choke point, this spot and who's then staying in these nice environments? Is it the Chinese then? And before they're then shuttled off to the United States, backed by United States dollars and the funding of the Department of Homeland Security? It's outrageous.
Chinese, Syrians, for instance, Anthony Rubin, who you've had on your show several times, the man works hard. He was working late last night, sending me incredible stuff. And Anthony Rubin, if you remember when he confronted those Syrians, and it was really a little dangerous for Anthony. He's got a wild side to him. Well, he was outnumbered about 10-1, and he's confronting those Syrians. Or they said they were Syrians. That was at China Camp. That's on the road right in front of HIAS. So HIAS was about 30 or 40 meters from where Anthony was, kind of calling out those Syrians. They were actually staying at China Camp.
So funneling American dollars to expand the size of this China camp, using U.S. taxpayer dollars to expand, make it a cushy environment for illegal Chinese and other immigrants to stay and then be ferreted off using luxury buses to the United States. Do I have that correct?
That is correct. That is accurate in detail. Now, again, Dr. Chris Martenson and Brett Weinstein and Masako Ganaha and Vandersteel, Chuck Holton, I just had them, not that Chuck needs anybody to take him deep into the jungle. That's where he spends a lot of his time. But we were out at Canam and Brio, which is it's where the Chinese have more money, right? So they take an easier route through Darien Gap. There's not like there's one route through Darien. There's many routes. And the more money you have, the easier it gets. And if you take the easiest routes, it's more like an adventure vacation with the Kuna Indians, carrying your stuff on horses. You come through clean, and you sleep a night in the jungle and that sort of thing. And they come out in this village called Canan Membrillo, which is about 3 hours or 4 hours upriver by Piragua. It took us about 4 hours that day because unfortunately we had 15 horsepower engines instead of 30, which I requested, and from the Indians. But we're pushing the boats. We get upriver, and you'll see in Canan Membrillo, Canan is the name of the village. Membrillo is the name of the river, Rio Membrillo. So they call it Canan Membrillo. It's an Imbra village. They are expanding that facility for more Chinese and others to come through what we call the ATM route. We call it the ATM route because that's the money route. That's the route that people come through. They never get raped. They don't get murdered. They don't get robbed because they pay up front. They pay thousands of dollars. I think I may have sent you a Chinese video one time. And you see the Chinese, it's in Mandarin, but they're coming through Colombia, and they come through on the boats. They get on the horses. It's a total vacation video. I'll send it to you if you haven't seen it yet. But they come through Canan Membrillo, part of that route. It's a total vacation. They're like, yeah, here we are in Panama.
Here we are. We spent the money, and we're getting, with the help of the Americans, we're invading your country right under the watchful eye of the Biden administration and Secretary Mayorkas. I want to get your take before I let you go here, Michael, on what happened this week with the Supreme Court and Texas. Now, it looks like, by all accounts, a cold civil war, right? You have on the one side Texas saying we're not going to abide by what the U.S. Supreme Court is saying here. We're going to protect our border and set up these razor wire fences, the Texas National Guard. The other side, of course, the Biden administration winning this ruling by the Supreme Court that they can remove this razor wire. But to me, I'm not a Texan. It looks like it looks fake. It looks like showboating because you've had years, Governor Greg Abbott, to secure your border. You've had years to do this. Now, suddenly you're doing it. It just seems phony to me. What do you make of this? Are we heading for a civil war, or is this showboating by the Abbott administration? What's happening here? You know this better than anyone.
Oh, we're clearly going into a civil war. I've been calling out Abbott for a long time. As you know, I spend a lot of time in Texas. I've been all over that border in detail. Abbott is a member of World Economic Forum, period. That's all you need to know. That's the uniform he wears. He's basically the Texas sector chief for the World Economic Forum. Everything he's doing with Biden, like Abbott fighting Biden, it's all kayfabe. I mean, I was down on the Mexican side at Piedras Negras, which is on the Eagle Pass is on the Texas side, and I was watching Abbott on my phone, and he's talking about how he's closing the border at Eagle Pass. This was like a couple of years ago, and I'm watching him cross right in front of me. My toes are practically in the Rio Grande, and I'm yelling over to the National Guard, hey, you're doing it wrong. I'm watching your boss right now. He said you're closing it down. I'm watching the Texas National Guard help him up the bank, right? I mean, it's all kayfabe. Abbott is one of them. Abbott is not our friend. Abbott is World Economic Forum. World Economic Forum is closely allied with the Chinese Communist Party. When I took Brett Weinstein down here, he just went home 3 days ago now. I think he was in disbelief when it was clearly he was in disbelief when he first came here. He didn't quite see what's actually happening. But within just a couple days, you could see the light bulbs were popping. I mean, he started to realize, hey, this really is Chinese. This really is the World Economic Forum. This really is IOM. This really is HIAS and all these other. Look, where I'm at now is called the City of Knowledge in Panama, right? This was the U.S. Army South headquarters. I'm in the old U.S. Army South headquarters right now. That's the Panama Canal right there behind me, right? This is Fort Clayton. This, for those who are stationed here, I am at your Fort Clayton, the formerly beautiful base, guarding the Miraflores locks over here and the bridge over there and the canal behind me, right? And the railway right underneath, right? So that's why Fort Clayton is here. This is all these arteries coming together. Now, in 1999, when we gave it back, after we built it up even more, we gave it to Panama with the keys in the door, literally. And now IOM has the choice. International Organization for Migration. They are the chief engine of the invasion, the IOM, or in some languages, OIM. But anyway, their office, 5 minutes walk from me right here. Their flag flies over Fort Clayton right now with the Panamanian flag. They just had last Saturday their 25th anniversary of opening the City of Knowledge. This was, again, when it turned over from Fort Clayton 25 years ago, it became this hub, which is now the headquarters for destroying the United States and Central America. Most of the Central Americans and Mexicans I speak with, they still have no idea what's happening, just like most Americans that still have no idea what's happening. Even the brilliant Brett Weinstein, now he sees it, but he had to get down here first to see it, right? And once you come down here, if you're a serious player, I'll take you, Clayton, but I'll take serious players down here. It's bigger than you imagine when you really get here. If you get Brett or Dr. Martinson, I'll take you. It's mind-blowing. I can't really explain it enough. It's like explaining the jungle, right?
Well, the next few months, I'll be down there with you. We're going to plan this over the next few months to be down there. Logistically, we'll work that out offline. But yeah, it's just speaking to Mexican citizens just a short time ago who told me their cities are being overrun by these migrants that are coming up through Mexico, that it's not Mexico doing this, and it's not Mexicans, it's their cities are being overrun by these illegals coming all the way up through. So, Mexico's not happy about this, from what I'm hearing from Mexican citizens as well. So, to your mind, we are heading towards a civil war. Michael Yon is in Panama, at the Panama Canal, watching these choke points and watching this all unfold. Michael, thanks as always for educating us about what's happening there, this very important story. Michael, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir, and I'll see you down in Darien Gap. I'll take you down there.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna get on the calendar with it, and I'd like to go down to the Panama Canal as well to see some of these facilities. So we will do that, Michael. We're also going to be really watching what's happening at the southern border on a regular basis as well over the next couple of months. Someone in the chat, Real Christian in the chat, says, Clayton, go advocate for the United States getting out of Syria, Iraq, Ukraine, everywhere before you tell these people to go back. Well, if you've been watching my show, if you've been watching this show for any length of time, you know that I always say that. I always say the reason we see these people pouring across the border mostly is because the United States invades their countries, goes to Somalia, goes to Syria, invades their countries, destabilizes their country through Latin and Central America, whether it's Honduras or Nicaragua. The reason you have people pouring across the U.S. southern border is because we invariably destabilize those countries.
Right. We talk about those wars in detail a lot.
Yeah.
So look through our channel for those pieces.
Yeah.
We invite you to.
During that segment, I was thinking, imagine if I didn't have a passport and I tried to go to Mexico or South America, like as undocumented American, imagine how hard it would be for me to get across our southern border versus what's going on. Look at the contrast. Like that, I wouldn't be able to get over there. Like they would not allow me in if I was undocumented or whatever.
Did you see it was amazing, the video that we were showing here, the razor wire in Texas. And you see these guys on the one side, they're putting, their riot gear. And then on the other side, they're letting them through and they're pointing on where they can go through. It's people in the chat were saying, yeah, it's a show. It's like a PR move down there. Do you guys buy that Governor Abbott's really now going to set up, fences and really employ the National Guard to take care of this? I mean, what do you guys think about that? Let us know in the comments.
I just think it's all... I was gonna say, I think it was brought up that it's optics, and that's, to me, that's exactly what it is. It's just political optics. So that it's everybody wanting to blame everybody else. So then you've got one side. So it's they're sending the Texas National Guard out there. They're not doing anything. It's just optics. It's just so that they can all point the finger and yell at each other. Yeah. They're just keeping it up so we all stay angry.
The point I was gonna make is if it wasn't optics, they would be securing the entire border and not just one small part of it. It's why that one small part? There's bigger issues in other parts of Texas, but that's the part they choose. Right. So if they really were going to do this, they would have secured the entire border.
And the Uniparty, which is Republicans and Democrats, they don't want the border secured. There's very few Republicans that are speaking out in favor of closing the border, but there's really there's unity in keeping it open. There's been unity in keeping it open for years. Why haven't we had any kind of closure on this for decades? Anyway, we'll keep our eye on this, of course, and see what happens. But we are heading for something serious here, especially as all of these trucks arrive in Texas over the next few weeks. And mounting over the past few hours. So I think you're going to see a lot of stuff hitting the fan very, very soon in Texas. All right. A lot of you also asking, are we going to be covering the Kari Lake story? Yes, that's coming up next. We're going to be talking about Arizona and the bribery story, which is just mind-boggling. If you haven't heard about it, we're going to dive deeply into it. We'll play you some of the audio, and I'm also going to really dive into why. I have a lot of questions, I should say. I have still a lot of lingering questions about this story that we'll get into.
Plus, we're going to talk about new studies that show that they need to reprogram you in your vaccine hesitancy, if you are guilty of that at all. Plus, the media continues to freak out about Donald Trump and show their cards, show their true stripes, and it's ugly. We're going to bring that to you. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at HelloFresh, because whether your resolution this year is to save money, eat better, or stress less, you know you can do all of those things when you eat at home more often, and HelloFresh is here to help you do all of those things. So say hello to your most delicious year yet with fresh ingredients and chef-crafted recipes at a price that you'll like, delivered right to your door. HelloFresh is a box of packed farm-fresh ingredients, and everything arrives pre-portioned right to your doorstep for less hassle and less wasted food. So you don't have to use half of a garlic or half of an onion. You're going to get everything you need just for those meals for that week, and you won't have leftover waste. I saw a funny meme this week that said, we don't waste food in this house. We put it in a container and then put it in the refrigerator and then throw it away a week later. That is what happens when you don't have pre-portioned food. That happens a lot in our house. You don't have to have that happen with HelloFresh. So you've actually resolved to eat healthier this year, and this is a great way to do it. So go to hellofresh.com/redacted-free. Use the code redacted-free for free breakfast for life. That's one breakfast item per box while subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at hellofresh.com/redacted-free with code redacted-free. So you'll order your meals, you'll get a breakfast too. That's 2 meals down that you don't have to use your creative energy into. So again, that's HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
Now, I do take umbrage with you saying that our leftovers get thrown out, because we had all that Chinese food. We had like containers, and it's all of it got eaten.
Yes.
All of it got eaten in our fridge.
But we didn't make that, right? I'm talking about the food that you bring home to prepare, and then a lot of it is wasted. But yeah, okay, you're right.
Okay. I mean,
yeah,
well,
the
leftovers.
Chinese food was eaten like wild dogs in our house.
Let us know where you're joining us from tonight in the chat room. Nice to see all of you guys on YouTube. Nice to see all of you guys on Rumble. Nice to see all of you guys on Twitter as well, or X. It's still so hard for me to say that about Twitter.
I feel like I'm programming myself little by little.
I still want to say a tweet, but I know we call them posts.
I just refuse.
Now,
right?
I just refuse. I will never use the other
call it
term.
Twitter.
I will just call it Twitter forever. Yep.
Okay.
I mean, what if we change the name of Redacted to like Thomas the Tank Engine's Happy Hour?
We did change the name of Redacted, and people got used to it. So, and you know what? I changed my last name because I got married, and people just get used to it. If you care about something, you just
to a better last name.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, you know,
excellent last name.
It's a little common. My maiden name was Del Conte. That was fun, but no one got it right on a credit card.
A lot of people joining us from Sweden, Canada, UK, the Netherlands, North Carolina, Ryerstown, Maryland is Carol Magoojan. Am I saying that right? Magoojan? Sorry, Magoojan. Carl. I said his first name wrong, and I probably got his last name right. Spain, Oregon, Gary, Indiana, Bulgaria, Seattle, Washington, New York City, Belgium, Denmark. You guys are all over the world. Anybody from Iceland? Anybody from Iceland tonight? Anyway, we got a huge international audience. Great to see all of you guys. Yes, we're going to talk about Kari Lake in a moment. We're going to talk about vaccine hesitancy and the media freaking out about Donald Trump in New Hampshire. Again, this is unbelievable video that we'll show you in just a few moments. But last night, the mainstream media was totally focused on Trump's whomping of Nikki Haley in New Hampshire. But another big story was breaking. It was breaking out in Arizona that they totally ignored. A new audio tape emerged that's been sending shockwaves through the Republican Party. We'll get to that audio here in a second. But first, some context on this story. Last March, Senate candidate Kari Lake appeared at a CPAC event and dropped this little nugget of a bomb. Listen.
People are to stop me and to silence you. I decided to share this. It's a little bit controversial, but I'm going to put this out. Somebody showed up at my door this week. They called me before and said, I got to talk to you in person. This can't be done over the phone, which is always kind of like, uh-oh, what's that going to be about? They came to my door and they tried to bribe me out of getting out of politics. It's really happened. I'm telling you this because this is how disgusting politics is. A mom who runs for office and they're afraid of me, they tried to bribe me with a job title, with a huge salary, a position on a board. This is how they do it.
Really? Bribing you to get out of the race so they can put an establishment neocon candidate in your place? The liberal media jumped all over it at the time, right? When after she made that speech at CPAC, the liberal media said this, Kari Lake spins tale of attempted bribery to drop out of politics. Spins a tale. Yeah, that's basically how they painted it. Like, oh, she's just making up a story to elevate herself, laughing at her. Sure, someone tried to bribe you. Right. Okay, sure. Well, apparently it did happen. Exactly as she described it. And now we have the secretly recorded audio. And before you ask this question, as I did, Arizona is considered a one-party consent state, meaning the person doing the recording is the only one that needs to consent to it, which I always found funny. It's like you record, like in certain states, you have two-party consent. Like you're going to record a phone call. Like I think the state of Maryland, that came up during the Bill Clinton, what was it? I forget.
Kenneth Starr?
Yeah, it came up during all of that, but I forget who was one of the women that recorded illegally. And there was
it was Monica Lewinsky's friend.
Yeah, I know. I can't think of her name. It starts with a T, and I'm drawing a blank here. Anyone in the chat room?
Right now
anyone in the chat room, let me know. But anyway, that got brought up, I think, in Maryland because she was illegally recording both sides of the phone call. You can't. Both parties have to agree to it. Anyway, Arizona, you don't. Just one person has to do it. So and it just can be a phone call. It can be face to face. It doesn't matter. So somebody recorded it. Arizona is considered a one-party consent state. So the hidden recorded audio allegedly features Arizona GOP party chair Jeff DeWitt. And I think it's safe to say not even allegedly anymore because just about an hour ago, he is now officially resigned. So, but, we're just saying allegedly.
Linda Tripp. Thank you.
Linda Tripp.
Yes.
Tripp. I knew it was a T in there somewhere.
I knew the chat would get it.
Thank you guys, Linda Tripp. Anyway, so Jeff DeWitt illegally recorded. Sorry, not illegally recorded. Let me go back. Hidden recorded audio allegedly features Arizona GOP party chair Jeff DeWitt meeting with Senate candidate Kari Lake. He shows up to meet with her and attempts to bribe her out of the race. He claims to be a messenger for some deep state folks back in D.C. I'm just the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. So who exactly sent him here to get her to drop out? We don't know. But, quote, there are very powerful people who want to keep you out, end quote, he told her during this meeting. Then he asks her, what do you want? Lots of money? High-paying position like Hunter Biden at Burisma, where you don't get to do anything at all? You don't have to do anything. You just collect a big paycheck every month? These are all things that he offers on her behalf of these unnamed bullies back in Washington, D.C. So here's just a sampling. I'm going to play a few little chunks of this. Here's just a sampling of this attempted bribe, asking her to stay out of this race for 2 years. Listen.
So what's going on? What is? I'm assuming this is our friend.
This is back east. There are very powerful who want to keep you out.
I know they do.
But they're willing to put their money where their mouth is in a big way. So, this conversation never happened.
This is crazy, though. They should want me. I'm a great candidate. People love me. These people are corrupt.
Well, maybe you're right.
They are right. They are corrupt.
Maybe. This never happened. Don't go. Do me a favor, though. I'll get myself in trouble. If you say no, which is fine, it's your choice. Don't tell people.
They're gonna try to have me murdered.
Not either. Today's world, man. If that stuff that came out last week is right about the cartel stuff, man, They said the cartel's operating in 50 states right now, like all 50. You know? So
what's going on? Who is it? What?
Forget the who. Let me just tell you the what. Let's just say there are people calling around saying, gosh, no, they can't repeat this. Never repeat this. If you say no, don't. If you say, I got offered to buy out. Don't use it. Because then we lose our ability to get things done in the future.
Here's my problem. Rather than just say, let's work with her, she's a great candidate, because they don't own me. And it pisses me off.
Yeah, I said that was about ownership.
It's about control.
I don't know it's about control. It's about being on the team. I guess that's, you know what I mean?
They want to be on the team.
They want you to be on their team.
But
just team. You know?
But if they're pushing a globalist agenda, I can't do that. So what do they want? What do they want me to do?
They want you to stay out for 2 years. What? I'll tell you what I can offer you.
And I'm guessing he's not talking about Roger Daltrey. So it's like this.
I'm not going to pause for 2 years. The battle is now. I'm offended by whoever these people are that they're trying to buy me out of.
Well, you should be honored.
I'm offended that there's people back there who just don't get about our country.
Do you understand, though? You should be honored. That means they know how powerful you are.
Well, I can tell them that.
If you weren't powerful, they wouldn't want to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Just to say, is there a number at which
I can be bought?
Not be bought.
That's what it's about.
You can take a pause for a couple of years.
No.
And then go right back to what you're doing.
No. 10 million, 20 million, 30, no. $1 billion, no. This is not about money. This is about our country.
No.
I'm not going to let these people who hate our country tell me not to run. You should call them and tell them to get behind me.
I mean,
I can win, and they should get behind me.
I will happily say those words.
Yeah.
Do you think my words will carry any weight? No.
Okay, well, did you think you would come in here and that I would be bought?
It's not being bought.
Yes, it is.
It
is being bought. No. They are trying to buy me out of running. It's actually, I mean, all right, I'm flattered. I'm offended. I'm offended for our country. We have people like this who live here.
What I think is this. Is it can give you an incredible opportunity to have a bigger voice to fight for stuff than you currently do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't want to deal with people like this. These people are un-American, and I think they're unethical, and I would be absolutely immoral if I did that.
Again.
That's immoral. I couldn't look at my...
So, all right. So we apologize there. We know we were muted in between the sound bites. I apologize. What we were saying is, I love how he started it off saying, don't worry about the who in any of this. Don't worry about who these people are. Just know what they want, which is they want you out for 2 years. They want you to sit on the sidelines for 2 years. We want you to take a back seat while we put up some other fresh faces for the next 2 years. You can just, we don't want that. They don't think that Trump will win. That's another big piece of this. They don't want Trump. They don't think Trump's going to win. They think he's old news. They don't want you tied to Trump because you're very tied to Trump. And she says, Trump's my guy. I'm supporting him. I'm not going to not support him. I'm sorry that they don't think that he's going to win. That's up to them. But I'm not going to do it. So I have a lot of questions. I have a few questions on this. I mean, number one, so she recorded this, right? I mean, reporter. She knows what she's doing, right? She's probably new. And he called her and said, I need to meet with you face to face. I'm coming over. So she got the iPhone ready. She hits voice memo record. We don't know. I'm just saying, clearly it's the two of them. Who's doing the recording? I don't know. Was there a secret? Was there somebody else there with a boom microphone, like with an arm microphone recording? Anyway.
Also, in this day and age of like your phone listening in, even when you're not recording, if I was going to have a conversation with somebody like this, I'd be like, let's take a walk. Let's go somewhere.
It's like, yeah. It's like what you have to do in like mafia times, right? Like, let's... Yeah,
Who's
come on,
that
Jimmy.
stupid?
Come on, Jimmy. Let's take a walk to the park. You know,
Naked in a previously undisclosed sweat lodge is about the only way I would do something like this and feel confident about it.
Exactly. Walking in the woods with naked with your hands like this.
That's how I take walks every day. Makes it a little rough in some of the. Anyway, yes, she's got her phone out. She's recording it using the voice memo. So she's doing that. And she has to know what's going on here. So, but my question is, this happened a year ago. So this recording is a year old. She recorded this back in early March of 2023. So why now? Like, why are we just now hearing about this leaked audio? I mean, how did it leak? Did a staff member get it? I'm just curious. Like, I want to know the logistics of that. How did this audio leak out? How did this come about? And why are we just hearing about this now? Maybe that's just me, but I'm just curious why we waited a year to hear about this. The timing is very interesting in all of this. And we now have an update, of course, that now Jeff DeWitt has resigned this afternoon. And there's calls, of course, for, criminal proceedings. I mean, now go after this guy. And I don't exactly know what law would have been. I mean, extortion, bribery, blackmail. I don't exactly know, but I mean, and how Arizona's laws would comport with federal laws and all of that, and how this works out.
Influence peddling, anything like
election
that.
interfering,
election interference. Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
But it's kind of like that. It's kind of like you're going after the little drug dealer to get to the big drug dealer, right? It's like, we'll go after him. We don't really want you. Who is it back east?
That's what I want to know.
Yes.
That's what we want to know.
Bingo.
And the thing is, like, think about this. We're hearing about this. Now, if we see, politicians end up on the boards of all these companies, they end up working for lobby companies, getting $200,000 speeches and stuff. Those are the people that said yes.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I would love to know who this is. And then there's a bunch of people in the chat are saying it's faked. So Vanessa Brookfield says, Clayton, it's faked. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that this audio, and what part of it do you think is faked? Here's a conspiracy. We question everything, right? We question everything. And I don't want to question Kari Lake in all of this and say that that she's lying here at all. But why now? I'm just curious why we're hearing about this now. And I guess the bigger question is, if it is faked, what's the purpose then? Is it to elevate Kari Lake to the purpose of becoming vice president? And now you hear the audio of her praising Trump, and then Trump picks her. Was it part of some larger scheme? Would we find out? Was it a sort of a Jesse Smollett scheme that we'd find out about? Who's, I don't know. I just want to know why we waited a year to hear this. She was being mocked in the press for telling people that this happened.
Right.
She could have, I'm just curious if she could have come out right away and been like, by the way, and you guys are mocking me. Here's the audio tape that I recorded of this.
Well, maybe she didn't want to throw him under the bus, but somebody else did.
Yeah, maybe a staff member. Maybe a staff member got a hold of her phone, got a hold of her voice memos.
Yeah.
Maybe who knows?
It's possible she was afraid too, but she doesn't sound very afraid. And she's kind of laughing it off, no, not for sale. Get out of here.
No, and let me just say this. Good for her. In this audio recording, she's completely saying absolutely not. That's corruption. I will never do this. I'm gonna run for the people of Arizona.
And his response is, if they're pushing a globalist agenda, to when she says that, if they're pushing a globalist agenda, I can't do that. He doesn't say no. He's kind of like, we want the globalist agenda.
He's kind of like,
Bingo,
maybe
that's
have a
what we
globalist
want.
agenda. That's kind of what they're pushing for. But hey, you could have a nice boardroom seat if you'd like, with a cushy job like Hunter Biden. You could have whatever you want. And people in the chat are calling for criminal charges right now. what do you guys think about this in the chat room? I'm just curious. I just want to know more about. I have a lot of questions. But so as of this hour, about an hour and a half ago, Jeff DeWitt did resign. He now has resigned as party chair in Arizona, and we'll see if we get to name names. Now the question is, who asked him to bribe Kari Lake? We want names, like we want the Epstein list, right? We want those names. We need. I wonder
if he's gonna Epstein himself before we can get that far.
Well, that's what people in the chat are saying too. Like, no, he did not kill himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I'd love to know these names. It'd be very, very interesting. Let us know in the comments what you think about all this. We've got more news to get to here on your Wednesday. We're going to look at this vaccine hesitancy story. The British Medical Journal calling for behavior interventions. Like, are you questioning your government? Well, maybe we need to have interventions to get you to get back on track here. Also, we're going to look at how the media is freaking out, the liberal media freaking out over Donald Trump's victory in New Hampshire. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, people who are trading stocks but would like a more profitable growth of their funds. Do you find yourself with a substantial amount of cash that's currently idle and not generating returns? It's high time you explore the trading app that I've recently started using, Moomoo, our friends over at Moomoo. Now offering an impressive 5.1 API plus an extra 3% API for your uninvested cash, which means you can receive $405 in 3 months without doing anything. Just put $20,000 in your Moomoo account, and that's it. You're going to receive a lot of interest on that money. $5,000, $100, whatever you want to put in your Moomoo account to let it grow interest at this over 8% interest rate right now. This is their 3% API booster rate for the next 3 months, just for 3 months, that you can get this additional 3% just by opening up your account. And you're going to get 15 free stocks when you open your account and make your qualified deposit. So all you need to do is go to redacted.inc/Moomoo to get 15 free stocks. Again, even if you never do anything else with this account, getting 15 free stocks, and then you could sell the stocks and then just keep the cash in this account growing at an 8% interest rate. That's pretty darn great, I would think. So right now, stock market, it's earnings season. So you can use the Moomoo earnings calendar. They've got all sorts of bells and whistles in there. You can check out the earnings release times of popular stocks such as Apple, Tesla, and you can also view their financial data all inside the Moomoo app so you don't miss anything. Sign up right now with our link below, grab 15 free stocks, and park your idle funds on Moomoo for a sweet 5.1 API plus 3% API extra. Or earn up to $5,000 in cash rewards when you transfer assets to Moomoo. So there's the link again, redacted.inc/Moomoo.
Well, the British Medical Journal published a study calling for behavior interventions on you if you have what they call vaccine hesitancy. It's almost like a disease. Do you have vaccine hesitancy? Do you have questions about vaccines? What this implies is that you must accept that all vaccines are great and ask no questions. It's like they're just Twinkies in a box. They're all the same, right? Well, clearly they're not. All vaccines are for different things. We are allowed to ask questions about each one together and how they work together. But if you ask those questions, you are vaccine hesitant. Bill Gates is saying this too. It's really just the misinformation about this that causes vaccine hesitancy, not the data, right? So if you have questions like that, you need your behavior modified. Now, I want to show you something crazy about vaccines before we get to this whole behavior modification thing, because the medical establishment has never actually had to prove to us the efficacy of the vaccine schedule, how they exist together, what ages they should be taken. Those things have never been studied together. And they are arbitrarily assigned, like, oh, this one, let's give this to a 6-month-old. Let's give this one to a 2-week-old, right? Why you do it at certain ages, there's no data behind that. Never been studied. This is going to blow your mind, though, because you know the argument that you raise when you raise about any vaccine, people will say, well, you know, vaccines, they eradicated all manner of infectious diseases. Well, it turns out that 90% of infectious diseases were in decline before vaccines were introduced. This comes from this book that I can't speak highly enough about, Turtles All the Way Down. It has basically everything you You need to know about what we currently know about vaccines and what we do not. Now, look at this chart. I want to leave it up for a long time because I think it's so shocking that I want you to stare at it. And I apologize, it's not a great scan because it came from the actual book. I don't have it in a Kindle version.
And I'll just say, when you showed me this chart for the first time this summer, I was shocked. Like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah. Okay. So this chart shows that infectious diseases began to decline precipitously around the mid-1920s, 1930s. They were all but eradicated when vaccines were first introduced in the 1950s. So why do we give vaccines credit for eradicating infectious diseases? Now, the diseases included in this chart are pneumonia, tuberculosis, typhoid, dysentery, syphilis, AIDS, which I'm not sure why that's there. Like, did we know about AIDS in the 1920s? But okay. Pertussis, diphtheria, and measles. Only the last three had childhood vaccines that were in use prior to 1970. Now, the notion that vaccines eradicated disease, the notion that these infectious diseases were in decline far before vaccines were introduced was originally published by Dr. Thomas McKeon. He began publishing his work in the 1960s, and even his most vocal critics were never able to disprove him. So they were ahead of their time. When you can't disprove the theory, you go after the dude. Right? That's what they did. His major takeaway as to why most of these diseases dropped before vaccines was that most of them were bacterial and could be fixed by a few simple things like washing your hands, not living with animals on the street, because it turns out we're getting a lot of diseases from their poop. Not living with rats, and also the advent of antibiotics. This research was corroborated by married couple John and Sonia McKinley. He was a Boston University sociologist, and she was a Harvard mathematician. Their research corroborating this has still not been resolved. So why did infectious diseases decline so much before vaccines? Not only that, why did infant mortality decline before vaccines? Look at this chart. Infant mortality is declining. Now recall, mid-1950s is when vaccines were introduced. Why did they go so far down so much before then? Same story with pertussis, diphtheria, and measles. Look at this chart. In decline before the vaccine. So the point is not to say that the vaccines don't prevent infection or transmission or severe disease. Some vaccines do reduce infection rates and mortality, but can we blanketly say all vaccines work, right? When we know that the things that they're working against were already in such precipitous decline. It's an important question. And so, we need to take it one vaccine at a time, one disease at a time. The medical establishment should prove it to us. We don't owe it to them to reprogram ourselves. That's nuts.
Kind of reminds me of, like, I don't know, just the thing that popped into my head is kind of like, well, America rolling into World War I at the last second, right? So it's almost done.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Right.
And now we get to choose and reorder the world. And World War II, here we are, D-Day.
Right.
We're here at the last minute, and we get to reorder the world. And I think it's fascinating because now it's on them to have to show us that what you actually did saved the world, right?
Right.
When in fact it might not have at all.
Well, because the timeline doesn't work out for that argument when somebody says that. That's not to say that it's not a useful thing to do, but they should prove it to us. They absolutely should prove that. They also should prove that they're safe to take in this schedule, that they're safe to give to small babies, and they're safe to give together, which they have never done. So with that in mind, listen to Bill Gates saying we need to really fight misinformation about vaccines.
COVID has also changed our relationship to healthcare. What does that mean for vaccination hesitancy in developing countries and developed nations?
Well, the misinformation about vaccines and associating certain people like myself or Fauci having malign intent with vaccines, that was most acute in the United States. But the pandemic which you would have thought, wow, global health research to talking about health, being ready for the next pandemic. When you've got millions of deaths, isn't that, it's sad, it's tragic, but isn't at least there a benefit that health is on the agenda? Sadly, it's a topic nobody wants to talk about because it was painful, it's over, let's move on from that.
Okay, that was utter nonsense, but we had to hear him say it.
In front of a fake brick wall.
That, misinformation is what's, associated to him and Fauci with the bad guys, but it's only just some crazies in America, not really everywhere. And at least we should be happy that we're talking about health, is what he says, which again is nonsensical. So let's turn our attention to the British Medical Journal talking about reprogramming us about vaccine hesitancy. Here's the study. You can seek it out for yourself. Not surprisingly, it calls for social media interventions to, you guessed it, misinformation. Calls for behavioral interventions such as mandatory vaccination. Well, that's not okay. That's kind of funny. Like, how do you modify this behavior? You make them take the vaccine, right? Okay.
I'm going to hold you down.
Right.
That's how you're going to eat your vitamins.
I don't think they understand what that means.
I don't think so either. Mandatory vaccination.
You failed the assignment.
It means it doesn't matter how you feel about it. You're going to take it, right? You can't be hesitant if it's like we're going to make you do it.
I always feel better about doing something after I'm forced to do it.
Absolutely.
When people force me to do it.
Okay. It also says regulation for healthcare professionals. I'm going to huff and puff and blow my house down. That's how I feel about that. Like, okay. Incentives, public health communication campaigns, and engaged trusted leaders. One of the diseases that they're really worried about in this study is the measles, and right on cue, the World Health Organization out of Kazakhstan issued this alarm today, saying that measles is on the rise. And let's see, do I have the numbers here? They're calling for urgent measles vaccination due to an outbreak of 42,000 cases, 65% of which are 5 years old. Now, we saw the measles chart earlier that showed that the mortality rate from the measles has been basically zero since the 1950s, far before the measles vaccine was out. Measles deaths, incidentally, when they happen, are caused by secondary bacterial infections that can be treated with antibiotics. And those antibiotics were developed before the vaccine. So we could credit the antibiotics for the drop in mortality and morbidity of measles, right? Right. So why do we need the vaccine? Interesting question. You need to reprogram me so I don't ask it. In fact, 82% of the reduction in measles deaths happened before 1935 when sulfonamides was first put into place to treat them.
I'll reprogram you so you can say that word.
Okay, so this erodes public trust because we don't have answers to these questions, and I haven't been programmed to not ask them. They push, vaccines, and when we question the efficacy, they say, well, let's study how to better stop getting people to ask those questions. Not like, oh, let's address those questions and they'll feel better. It's how do we get her to STFU and stop asking them behavioral modification.
And it'd be one thing if the questions that we were asking didn't have data to back up that we had answers for, right? Like if we were asking questions that there was zero data to back up our questions, okay, like you're absolutely wrong. We can show you factually you are wrong, but they can't do that in most cases with the questions we ask.
No, well, they won't fund studies about the cumulative effects of vaccines. They won't fund them. They do. The studies that exist about the cumulative effect of vaccines are so terrible that in one of them, they said that the study was done, I think, in Quebec, and it ended up being in like a small Quebec village and not the city, and they never retracted it. It's so bad. And they purposely don't study it, and they doctor the studies in order to be able to give you a conclusion that they want. But they have never studied which vaccines are safe to be taken together, how many are safe to be given at a time, the age at which vaccination should occur, and whether they are contraindicated effects of taking vaccines in combination. Some vaccines, they do cause herd immunity and some don't. We are owed the truth about which are which, nor are there studies about the long-term effects of vaccine schedules. And the medical community just won't fund these studies. But then you see a bullshit study like this, the BMJ study, and they will fund a study about our attitudes about vaccines. That to me is funny and backwards and tragic and awful. And yeah, I said it, BS.
How many vaccines are in the vaccine schedule right now? I know didn't they add like another 2?
They added COVID, and I think they're still trying to add RSV. But that hasn't been added to the schedule.
So it's like,
at this point,
it's like, isn't it like 20 or something like that? I mean, the point that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. makes is that when he was growing up, it was like 3, three maybe, or 2 or 3.
Right.
And now we're over 20. And so, yeah, they'll just flood them all at once. Well, we'll knock 6 of them out today.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just, give me the baby. We'll plug you with 8 of them simultaneously.
Right.
Right. And they've never been studied on how those interact and giving them all at once.
They never have. And they're not studied with how they interact with, say, a regular medicine that the baby might be on or anything like that. They just willfully refuse. So, yeah. I'm interested, not in being reprogrammed to not ask those questions. I'm interested in answers to those questions. So let us know what you think of that in the chat below.
Someone in the chat just said that, where was that? Oh, Jan Isherwood says, we had a measles party back in the day.
Yeah.
Like people would do with like chickenpox parties,
right. Yeah. I get that. It's the secondary bacterial infection that can be dangerous. It's not the actual measles. Yeah.
Those people must have had money because we only had scurvy parties at our house.
Scurvy parties.
Okay.
So someone brought an orange over to make you... Someone ate some citrus and everyone got better. Scurvy, the one that citrus eradicates? Yeah.
Yeah, vitamin C. It's vitamin C deficiency.
Yeah. Let's see. Minga Music Videos says, Redacted, look up the study showing that childhood measles infection reduces the risk of CVD death decades later. Association of measles and mumps with cardiovascular disease, the Japan Collaborative. Okay.
Okay.
We'll mark that.
Again, I've said it a few times. I did a redacted conversation about the book Turtles All the Way Down. It's fantastic. Join our redacted community if you want to watch that review of the book, but better yet, read it. Just read it yourself. It's an amazing book. Interestingly enough, it is unauthored or unattributed because the author said, if we put our names on this, we'll just become a part of the conversation and be known as the crazies. You should just read this so that you don't have a face to refute us with the science only. It's fantastic. The only thing they tell us is that they're Israeli doctors. That's all we get. And I cannot recommend it enough. I wish I had had it as a resource when my kids were small for vaccines.
It's interesting that they're Israeli doctors too. I mean, Israel went crazy. I mean, the amount of COVID shots, it was really like the petri dish for like rolling out vaccines, right?
The COVID vaccine is not really mentioned in this book, even though it was the impetus for it. So,
but didn't we actually, they did jump in on board, but didn't most of the data where people were pulling back from it start happening from that? Because we were hearing from Israel, they're pulling back. They're now saying this is the data they're actually getting. Well, we stopped hearing from Israeli doctors.
Yeah, it's very weird because we've done a couple of segments on that with journalists who lived in Israel, and we were covering the fact that their adverse reporting agency data was far more advanced and more on point than what we were seeing in other countries. So I think because we were seeing those adverse events and we were getting that data from Israel, it was more on point, and we were able to see some of that early on, actually.
Yeah. The chapter on polio vaccine alone reads like a murder mystery. It's crazy. That's all I'm going to tell you. You have to read it. It's crazy. Okay, well, we're going to talk about other crazy people in the media who can't handle it. They're sore losers. because Donald Trump is winning the New Hampshire primary, or he won indeed. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Provia, because if you're one of the millions of American men and women of any age dealing with premature hair thinning and loss, or maybe you're scared about inheriting that thinning look because it runs in the family, well, start 2024 off right with a real solution that delivers on its promise without the harsh side effects, unwanted chemicals, and no need for a prescription. Provia uses a safe natural ingredient called Procapsule to effectively target the three main causes of premature hair thinning and loss. By supporting healthy scalp circulation, the delivery of nourishing nutrients, and healthy hair follicles anchoring to your scalp, Provia guarantees more hair on your head than in the shower or on your comb. It's effective for men and women of any age and safe on colored, treated, and styled hair. It's that easy. And right now, new customers save over 50% off, plus free shipping on Provia's introductory package by going to proviahair.com/redacted. Every package includes a full 60-day supply of Provia serum for daily use, plus the Provia Super Concentrate for faster, more noticeable results. And every order includes your choice of a free gift right now at checkout. Provia works or your money back. Don't wait. So order right now. Save and get an extra 10% off plus free shipping. It's proviahair.com/redacted. One more time, proviahair.com/redacted. Well, the media keeps freaking out about how Trump is winning the Republican primaries. Last night was the New Hampshire primary, and it was same thing, just like they freaked out last week in Iowa when he won that one too by a wide margin. Now, last week, we showed you how they were censoring his victory speech. Now, we are not here to praise Trump. We are not here to praise Biden or talk down about either of those. What we're here to do is show you how dishonest the media is, and also just how sour grapes they are about all of this. Here was Rachel Maddow last week on MSNBC. This is a bad video copy. I apologize. But here is she saying, we just can't play Trump because he lies. It's an editorial call, but we trust ourselves to make it.
I'm sorry, I just have to do a little bit of business just for a second. At this point in the evening, the projected winner of the Iowa caucuses has just started giving his victory speech. We will keep an eye on that as it happens. We will let you know if there's any news made in that speech, if there's anything noteworthy, something substantive and important. The reason I'm saying this is, of course, there is a reason that we and other news organizations have generally stopped giving an unfiltered live platform to remarks by former President Trump. It is not out of spite. It is not a decision that we relish. It is a decision that we regularly revisit. And honestly, earnestly, it is not an easy decision, but there is a cost to us as a news organization of knowingly broadcasting untrue things. That is a fundamental truth of our business and who we are. And so his remarks tonight will not air here live. We will monitor them and let you know about any news that he makes. Stephanie.
I was just saying, I believe that's why.
All right, so she basically, at first she even said that person, like he's Voldemort, and you can't say his name. He who must not be named has won. He is giving a speech, the winner. Go ahead.
That coming from the Queen of Russiagate.
I know.
Right.
It's
There's a
such
cost to knowingly broadcasting untrue things, she said, and that's the nature of our business. It is. I'm glad she woke up to that after lying to me for 4 years during the Trump administration about Russiagate. You're right. Or saying things about the COVID vaccine that were unproven, that she just was taking a gamble on. But okay, she thought that it was okay to act as a sieve for Trump's words. And, you know, they must have had some real understandable backlash from this. Like this lady, this went viral on TikTok, Irene Britt USA.
So they will monitor it for us, and they will let us know if there's anything noteworthy. They'll let us know, rather than just playing the speech, being a network that informs people and lets us hear from the winner of that evening. They decided that we're too stupid to hear it and make up our own minds about whether, you know, the information is truthful or not. And this is the democracy they speak of. How is this different from certain countries who filter everything so that people don't get the information that's out there? How is this any different?
All right. Good point. It's not. So this week they decided, okay, we're gonna broadcast Trump's speech, but here's the caveat: we're gonna do it, but we don't like it. Watch.
So this is a decision that we revisit constantly, and that we will revisit constantly. But tonight, we're expecting Trump to speak momentarily. We are going to go to those remarks to see how he uses this moment, at least at first. We'll see how it goes. Again, this is a decision that is one that we consider to be an open-ended, live decision. Let's go to Trump headquarters right now in Nashua, New Hampshire.
It's so condescending.
We'll see how it goes.
It's so condescending. Yeah. We here at NBC will see how it goes.
Tell me you didn't get in trouble for making that decision last time without telling us you got in trouble for making that decision last time.
And she's so begrudging. Like, I don't agree with this, but they're making me do it.
She does it so smugly, and condescending. It's like, well, we'll see. We'll really see how this goes. And
right.
I'll be sitting here with my finger on a button, okay, for you, the audience. In case things go haywire, me, Rachel Maddow, I'll be sitting here with my finger on the Trump button.
Well, that's exactly what she did. So they watched, and if they heard even the faintest lie, they jumped in, like right here.
And she was up, and I said, wow, she's
So
doing,
there we go. So this is part of the issue here. So Donald Trump saying that he won New Hampshire not only in previous primaries, but that he won New Hampshire in the general election is not true. Donald Trump did, to his credit, in 2016 win the New Hampshire Republican primary. He did in 2020 win the New Hampshire Republican primary. But both in 2016, when he was competing against Hillary Clinton in the general election, he narrowly lost New Hampshire in the general election. And then in 2020, when he was competing against Joe Biden in the general election, he lost New Hampshire by a good, fair chunk of vote. So the former president has opened his remarks tonight once again by proclaiming falsehoods about previous elections. This is what makes it hard to take his pronouncements live. We'll try again, though. Here we go.
See, she was so happy. Like, I had to cut in. I was waiting. That's a lie. Let me back in. You go live, guys. Go live. Yeah. You got to cut in.
Where's my Maddow button?
Can you show me the clip? Can you show me the clip of her doing that to all Biden speeches really quick?
Well, that's a point I would like to make. Yeah, and it's true. Trump didn't tell the truth about winning the general election in New Hampshire. It's up to us, the voters, to decide if that's a lie or a gaffe. And if they're going to jump in on that, then you're right. They've got to do that for all politicians. So they're going to be busy. They better be ready with their facts, right? Like, he said, like, here's one, for instance, Joe Biden just last week said that his son died in the war in Iraq.
I said that at an event, and people didn't have chairs, and the press looked at me and said, what the hell's the matter with that guy? Anyway, Edward, thank you. Sergeant First Class, I was telling him my son, Bo, who I lost because of what happened in Iraq. Anyway, my son Bo, when he made major in Iraq, I was there. I wasn't with him when he made that, when he got promoted, but I was with him later at an event, anyway.
Rachel Maddow here. I just want to break in on this coverage right now, and what the president is saying right now is a lie. What this president is saying right now is a lie. And I'm just going to cut into this coverage right now.
And clearly he doesn't know where the hell he is. Back to you, Clayton. Right. Back to you.
Oh, my God.
Go ahead.
Well, it'd mostly be like, I think what he just said was a lie, but I can't quite make up the words that he said before and after it. So taking the totality, I think there was a lie in there somewhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, here, I'll give you another. And again, was that a lie or a gaffe? He probably doesn't stinking know. He doesn't know, right? Trump, we should say, okay, you won the primaries here before, but you didn't win the general election. Maybe he was misspeaking, or maybe he was exaggerating, or maybe he was trying to lie to us. It's up to us, right? And maybe they could point it out later, but not like, I need to break in. I don't know. Then you have to do it for everybody. Like, here is Joe Biden back in December saying that his father was a victim of the October 7th attack in Tel Aviv. This makes zero sense, but watch.
But we know this year's Hanukkah is different. It's been 65 years since the deadliest day of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. 65 years. After October 7th, my father returned to his kibbutz to salvage what he could from his home. What was left was the rubble and ruin. The home, which he had hidden with his
Okay,
wife
can I
and
just,
daughter
I
for
just need to
20
break
years.
into that too, if you can just go live. Joe Biden, his father never lived in a kibbutz. His father was long since dead at the October 7th attack. And I don't believe he's Jewish. He's told us many times that he's Irish. So that is the consequence of broadcasting untrue things.
Or what about his speech?
You as a voter might be influenced by that lie.
And what about his speech 2 days ago where he said, Terry McAuliffe, you're the real governor of Virginia. I'd like to welcome my good friend Terry McAuliffe here in Virginia. He's the real governor. No. He lost. He lost the election. He's not the real governor. So, that's the very same thing those are the truths that Rachel Maddow was really up against, right? The election interference talk and all of this stuff. Well, here's Biden in a big speech saying that Terry McAuliffe is the real governor of Virginia, according to President Biden.
Right. Again, my point is you either got to do it neither or you got to do it both. This highlights how MSNBC also has started to take old man shots at Trump, which is a pot and a kettle that are both black, not at Biden, who is no spring chicken. Now watch Rachel Maddow say that Trump is not offering the voters youth, and she laughs, and Jen Psaki gives her a sycophantic laugh. Watch.
I think that there's a very simple reason that Trump is making that the closing argument in what may be the last contested primary. And it's because that's really what he's offering. I mean, this is the special sauce. Donald Trump is not leading the Republican Party and leading the Republican field of candidates because of his youthful vigor or because of his policy preferences or because of his eloquence.
Yeah, that's so funny. He's so old. Have you seen Joe Biden? You got to take those same shots. You got to take them both or don't take them at all. And here she is saying that Trump is doing Jedi mind tricks on voters because they don't know reality. She calls it reality bullying.
I mean, let's just be really clear about this, right? So Trump saying tonight, after having won the New Hampshire primary, which he has done twice before, having then gone on to say that's not enough. You can't just claim credit. You have to claim credit. You have to falsify the election results in the 2 times that you lost the state, is a form of like reality bullying in a way. And he's done this around Iowa as well. So, for example, he doesn't have bragging rights about winning the Iowa caucuses. He lost the Iowa caucuses in 2016 to Ted Cruz. But after winning the Iowa caucuses this time, he said, it's really great to have won it for 3 times in a row. And he knows that it's not true, and he knows that everybody listening to him knows that it's not true. It's like his insistence on the date of the Spanish flu epidemic, or his insistence on what the hurricane track was going to be that he had to draw in with a Sharpie. It's an exercise in bending reality to his will and insisting that others follow. It's an exercise in making people who love him denounce reality and endorse his view instead as a form of fealty, as a form of loyalty. And it's a way of breaking the truth in our country and showing that his most loyal people will do that in a performative and effacing way.
And I love Chris Hayes,
Isn't that exactly what she did by not showing Trump's speech? Like, she's like, I'm going to twist your reality, and we're not going to play this because of your fealty to us, and you hate Donald Trump, and we're going to make sure that you remember that we hate him too. It's like she's doing the exact same thing by not playing his speech that she's saying that he's doing.
Right, but she's also rallying up the people who hate him so much, and it's a commiseration. Like, you come here because you hate him. I hate him too. You're going to see me act superior, and you will feel fed in your hatred and validated, right? And then she's also saying that anyone who doesn't feel like you has divorced themselves from reality. Thankfully, you're in reality, but those Trump supporters, they're idiots. They don't live on planet Earth. They are willing to put the truth aside for fealty, she says. Here is where she says that Trump is promising the end of politics because he's poised to be a dictator.
What he's offering is what he both sort of inherently offers and now more and more explicitly offers, which is, if you pick me, that'll be the end of politics. And you won't have to deal with politics anymore. You won't have to deal with contested elections. You won't have to deal with contests or divisions when it comes to power. You'll have a strongman leader, and I'll just do what I want. And won't that be a lot simpler? That's what he's offering. That strongman model is what the Republican base is enthused about. And that is something that sets him apart from every other Republican candidate. And I think that we're naive to think that he's tricking people into picking him and then surprise, he's going to act like a dictator. What he's offering is strongman leadership, the end of politics, the end of elections, the end or the sidelining or domesticating, as Ruth Ben-Ghiat says, of the judiciary and the Congress. He'll be the man in charge, and he'll get it done. And that's what he's selling, and that's what they are very eager to buy.
On the same night that we now have Democrats calling on President Biden to nationalize the Texas National Guard because of the border dispute, take control of Texas and what is sovereign in the state of Texas as a dictator. And Democrats are openly calling for this over the past about an hour and a half now.
Yeah.
So Trump's the dictator. And when did Trump say he wanted to get rid of elections? Like, can you point to that, Rachel Maddow? Like, when was that moment?
No, it's the Democrats that have outlawed actually making any rules around elections. I refer you to the Ken Paxton interview with Tucker Carlson, where he talks about how he's fighting with hands tied behind his back because he's no longer allowed to investigate any election fraud. That's happened under Democrats' watch. And I watched her throughout the whole Trump presidency, and I remember having her on once when my dad was around, and my dad's like, she's a troublemaker. She's trying to stir things up. But I couldn't see it at the time. Now I see nothing but the fact that she refuses to look at how Biden has weaponized the Justice Department against his political opponent and shielding his family from justice, peddling influence abroad, leading the country into countless wars, leading American deaths. And that is not enough to be afraid of. We have to be afraid of what Trump might do when we did have peace during a Trump administration. And again, she was wrong about Trump and Russia. And I just feel so betrayed by that. And like, she doesn't have this moral high ground to walk on any longer. So once again, we're not promoting any one candidate. We're just showing how dishonest the media is. And the left is being a sore loser.
I want to point out, too, the story we talked about earlier with Kari Lake and taking bribes. Jen Psaki. Jen, if you spin the president's information for this time, I know you hate it. You're not going to be able to sleep at night. But then when you're done, we're going to give you this grand position on this news network, and you're going to get all this money and everything. And she obviously said yes.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's exactly what she did. She knew she was going to take this job. She was setting herself up to have this media darling position at MSNBC, and they've elevated her to like one of the sort of senior voices now. And you always get to see who the network is like grooming during election nights. Who are they putting on the desk? Who are they having sat next to the main anchors? And who are they letting do all the talking and all of that? And you're seeing Jen Psaki, of course, being elevated tremendously now inside of MSNBC.
Right. And if I may, this is not a nice thing to say, but she's not a good broadcaster. She's
Jen
very
Psaki?
phony.
No.
Yeah. And just in terms of like most of those people sitting at that panel, they're liars, but they're good broadcasters. I'll give them that.
They're good at broadcasting lies.
Right.
Jen Psaki is lying.
Jen Psaki is lying, and
I
don't think she's a very good broadcaster. I'm sorry to throw stones. I don't mean to. Yeah, I did a little bit. That was a little, I had to. I don't know. It was just bubbling up in me. I won't be mean anymore. Now, I want to just say that there is an appetite now on the left of Democrats saying, let's stop being so religious about our identity politics and stop looking down our nose at Trump voters because there's something to see there. Jamie Dimon, of all people, said this at the World Economic Forum at Davos last week. Watch.
And I just also want to point out, I wish the Democrats would think a little more carefully when they talk about MAGA, and if you travel this country, and the country's unbelievable. We took our bus trip this year, and Leslie Picker was on Spokane and Boise and Bozeman. People are growing. They're hungry to grow. They're innovating. It's everywhere. It's not just Silicon Valley. So we've got this great hand. But when people say MAGA, they're actually looking at people voting for Trump, and they think they're voting, and they're basically scapegoating them, that you are like him. But I don't think they're voting for Trump because of his family values. And if you look, just take a step back, be honest. He was kind of right about NATO, kind of right about immigration. Mm-hmm. He grew the economy quite well.
China virus.
Tax reform worked.
Yeah.
He was right about some of China. I don't like what he did.
No, I said China virus.
Yeah, I understand. He may have been right. And I don't like how he said things about Mexico. I don't like, but he wasn't wrong about some of these critical issues, and that's why they're voting for him. And I think people should be a little more respectful of our fellow citizens. And when you guys have people up here, you should always ask the why.
That was what? You're saying that? You're saying he was right about NATO? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're a globalist, and you're saying that. So
right.
Okay.
And immigration,
my reality,
and illegal immigration, and what's happening in the United States, and they're all just sort of sitting there dumbfounded, like, yeah, okay.
I wonder when his PR apology tour starts. What I really meant to say in that the other day was
right. Yeah. And it's worth noting that Democratic candidates, well, there is one who is also willing to talk like this. The Democrats just ignore him. I remind you that Representative Dean Phillips is also trying to run for president against Biden. He gets no airtime, but he said this, and CNN didn't cut his mic.
And I got to tell you guys, I went to a Donald Trump rally a couple nights ago. Never been to one. I had an event across the street. I saw the line of people waiting in the cold for hours. And I thought, what the heck? I'm going to be a leader who actually invites people, doesn't condemn them. Met probably 50 Trump people waiting in line. Every single one of them, thoughtful, hospitable, friendly, all of them so frustrated that they feel nobody's listening to them but Donald Trump. A diverse crowd, people who had never been to a Trump event before. My party is completely delusional right now. We have a crowd.
Yeah, he said that. So there are Democrats who are willing to look across the aisle and say, okay, what do you want? Why are you voting
more of that? More of that in this nation, please.
Yeah.
What do you want? What are you so upset about? Most Americans want their family to be safe, right? Most Americans want their schools to be run well. Most Americans want to be able to provide for their family.
They want
when they
nice
work 40
things
hours
for
a
their
week.
taxes, like a nice police station, a nice fire station, a nice
Right.
community center, a nice high school.
I saw a photo the other day from the 1950s, I believe, and it showed husband and wife, 2 kids in a yard with a small house, and they had a car in the driveway, and it said, this family is able to live off of the father's salary as a worker at Ford, at the Ford Motor Company.
Yeah.
Kids laughing in the yard, car, house, and taken care of. Not in the United States. You can't do that anymore. That's what Americans want. They would love a return to that. And to hear that, you're a racist, you're a misogynist, you
bend reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
anyway.
Now it's 3 jobs in America, and that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, let us know what you think of this behavior out of your media. We'll be watching this as the primaries continue. We have South Carolina coming up in a couple of weeks, and it's going to be a fun season.
We'll see what Nimrata does, if she stays in the race or drops out. And it's funny. I saw something today. Like, she's becoming more and more confident as she loses. And I saw a Babylon Bee headline today. It was a very funny Babylon Bee headline. What was it? It said Nikki Haley. What was the now I'm doing this.
Won New Hampshire by negative 14 points.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yes, Nikki Haley won New Hampshire by negative 12 points or negative 14 points. That's how you win, by losing by 14 points. Anyway,
she's probably happy because every time she loses, she's probably like, her bank account just keeps getting full. She's like, I keep losing and making more money from donations. What does she care?
Yeah.
Right. Well, the money's pouring in.
She'll be on the speech circuit, that's for sure. Yeah.
So we have a community, and we also have a store. We'd love for you to join our community, though. Join our Plus Club. So Redacted Plus, it's a place that you can go, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can join us just by going to redacted.inc. Just when you click there, you see on the right side of your screen, join the Redacted community, where you have access to interviews that we give to you before anyone else ever sees them, exclusive content. It's a great way to connect with other Redacted viewers. Also, we have our Redacted book clubs in there and exclusive content. We'd love for you to be a member. Again, for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us exclusively there by going to redacted.inc. Again, the show is totally free. We give it to you for free on YouTube, on Rumble, on Twitter, or X. And so, you don't have to pay for it at all. But if you'd like to support independent journalism and get some of those exclusive bonuses and be a part of our community, we would love to have you. Join the rebellion. Join the Redacted Plus Club by coming over to redacted.inc is the place to go.
All right, we'll see you back here tomorrow, everybody. Same time, same place, every day, Monday through Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to the newsletter. Read it tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Bye, everyone.